Something happened to Prince Louis that the palace spent months refusing to explain. One day he was there, bouncing on the balcony, covering his ears at the flyover, stealing every frame he appeared in. Except then he was gone.
Resistance, and the palace gates didn't just close, they swallowed a prince whole, and the silence that followed was louder than any royal trumpet. 1 second he was there, the bright spark on the balcony, the child who stole the show with unfiltered grins and restless hands, and the next, he was gone. No warning, no gentle transition, no taking a short break explanation slip to the press, just absence. A vanishing so clean it almost felt rehearsed. And when the youngest son of the Prince and Princess of Wales disappears from public life without so much as a reassuring school photo, you don't call that routine. You call that strategy. The empty space beside his father began to feel heavier with every appearance. Prince William stood steady, jaw set in that familiar future king composure. Prince George looked taller, more aware. Princess Charlotte waved with calm precision. But the place where Prince Louis once shifted, fidgeted, pulled faces, and leaned too far over the railing, that place became painfully still. At first glance, the lineup looked complete. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Something was missing, and the palace said nothing. Not a minor illness, not a private family matter, not even a vague reassurance, just silence. The kind of silence that institutions use when they are calculating their next move. Inside a monarchy built on symbolism, absence is never accidental. Every public step is choreographed. Every photograph is approved. When one of the most recognizable royal children vanishes from the schedule entirely, it is not oversight. It is decision. Engagement after engagement passed. No new candid images. No cheerful waves from behind iron gates. No small, chaotic moments that once made him the unexpected star of balcony scenes. Instead, there was composure, controlled smiles, controlled framing, controlled narrative. And then, when the pressure finally mounted high enough to demand acknowledgement, the palace released a statement so carefully worded, it felt like it had been polished for days. Protected time away from public life. That was it. Not temporary, not short-term, not clarified, just protected time. In his best interests. On the surface, it sounded responsible, thoughtful, parental. But for anyone who understands royal language, the phrasing rang like code. Royal statements are rarely emotional, but they usually offer subtle context. This one offered nothing. No timeline, no hint of return, no explanation of what exactly required protection. Within minutes, headlines exploded. Commentators dissected every word. Supporters expressed relief that the silence had cracked at all. Critics noted how clinical the message sounded, as if its purpose was not to explain, but to close discussion. And what it didn't say was even louder. It did not describe the break as brief. It did not reference a scheduling conflict. It did not suggest routine privacy. Instead, it formalized the disappearance. It stamped it. Prince Louis was no longer participating in public royal duties. Period. When a palace chooses language that restrained, it usually means something larger is being contained behind the scenes. Because long before that statement ever reached the press, there had been a moment. One that cameras almost caught. The balcony appearance looked normal at first. Bright daylight, flags waving, the family standing shoulder to shoulder. But when footage was replayed and slowed, details began to surface. Louis, once animated and unpredictable, appeared stiff. His hands were clasped tight instead of waving, his posture rigid. When the crowd roared, he did not lean forward in curiosity, he shifted back. His eyes avoided the sea of faces below. What once looked like playful restlessness now felt like tension, and Catherine noticed. For a split second, almost swallowed by camera flashes, she turned toward him. It wasn't the usual proud glance. It was quick, searching, measuring. Her smile remained, but something behind it flickered. A silent assessment. Could he endure this? Prince William's movements were just as subtle. During the anthem, he scanned beyond the family line. A senior aide stood behind them. William gave the slightest nod. The aide stepped back further into shadow. At the time, it meant nothing. Later, it felt like confirmation that something was already being managed. Then came whispers from photographers. Unusual instructions before the appearance. Avoid extended close-ups of Louis. No solo shots. Lenses not to linger. One described a last-minute adjustment that felt different from routine protocol. The balcony wasn't just a celebration. It may have been a threshold, the final public moment before a retreat already in motion. By the time protected time appeared in an official statement, groundwork had been laid, but the real shift didn't unfold on balconies. It unfolded behind palace walls, and it started with Catherine. According to insiders, she began writing letters. Handwritten, direct, not political, maternal, urgent, sent to King Charles, sent to senior aides. She didn't ask for sympathy, she asked for space. face. She described changes the public had never seen, unexplained tears, nervous muttering replacing laughter, withdrawal during palace visits, the sound of camera shutters unsettling him, resistance during tutoring sessions. To her, these were not phases. They were warning signs. Inside the institution, advisors cautioned against drastic action. Withdrawing him would ignite speculation. Headlines would multiply. Silence would invite rumor. The monarchy depends on image, stability, continuity. But Catherine wasn't speaking as Princess of Wales in those letters. She was speaking as a mother. The tension deepened when Louis was scheduled to attend a ceremonial unveiling with his siblings. That day, he reportedly refused to leave his room. Reassurance failed. Promises didn't move him. The machine of the royal calendar pressed forward, and Catherine drew a line. She did not attend either. Absence sent shockwaves through palace corridors. Protocol had been disrupted. The institution does not bend easily to emotion, but something had shifted. She was no longer requesting change quietly. She was demanding it. Inside planning meetings, discussion of Louis's appearances became tense. Advisors emphasized optics. She emphasized well-being. The debate was no longer theoretical. It was immediate. And eventually, someone else inside the family had to listen. Prince William could no longer remain neutral. He had seen the changes. He had read the letters. And as heir to the throne, he understood how powerful the system could be when it resisted alteration. The confrontation took place at Clarence House. King Charles sat at the center of the room. The Queen Consort has hosted a reception at Clarence House alongside King Charles in their first public appearance together since she was diagnosed with CO. Queen Camilla was present. Senior aides waited beyond the immediate circle. William arrived carrying a folder. Inside it were copies of Catherine's letters, internal notes documenting Louis's recent struggles, and a signed warning from a doctor advising caution. Continued exposure without adjustment could worsen the strain. At first, William spoke calmly. He outlined concerns. He questioned the pace of appearances. He made it clear this was not rebellion against duty, it was protection of a child. King Charles responded with reassurance. The monarchy has endured because it balances private hardship with public responsibility. Adjustments could be discussed, but instability could not be projected. Then, according to one insider account, a remark suggested Louis might simply be going through a difficult phase. Something shifted. William closed the folder, stood up. The calm evaporated. He made it clear his son was not an asset to be managed for popularity. The implication cut deep. Image could not outweigh well-being. Silence followed. He pointed to the medical warning. This was no longer about perception. It was documented. Professional. Serious. The heir to the throne had challenged the machinery that shaped his own life. And once that boundary was spoken aloud inside Clarence House, it could not be ignored. When the heir to the throne challenges the very system that raised him, the walls don't shake, they listen. After the confrontation at Clarence House, the atmosphere inside the royal household shifted in a way that was impossible to measure publicly, but impossible to ignore privately. There were no slammed doors, no dramatic exits, no raised voices echoing down historic corridors. But something had cracked. The future king had drawn a boundary, and this time, it wasn't negotiable. In the days that followed, conversations multiplied behind closed doors. Senior advisors met quietly. Private secretaries recalculated schedules. Communications officials drafted and redrafted language. The question was no longer whether Prince Louis would step back, it was how to make that step appear seamless, controlled, intentional. The monarchy survives on rhythm. Engagements, ceremonies, balcony waves, handshakes, all part of a choreography perfected over centuries. To remove a royal child from that pattern required surgical precision. The decision had to feel protective, not reactive. Thoughtful, not pressured. Calm, not panicked. And so the calendar was adjusted. Upcoming events were reviewed. High visibility appearances were reshuffled. Planning documents quietly removed Louis's name from ceremonies that once would have included him automatically. No announcement accompanied those edits. No flashing headline declared it. It simply happened. His presence erased line by line from future engagements. Royal correspondents were guided gently toward phrasing that emphasized privacy. Photographers were reminded of existing protocols. Insiders say there were quiet conversations discouraging aggressive attempts at capturing unscheduled images. No dramatic scenes, no desperate chases. If the shift was going to happen, it would look natural. When the official statement finally arrived, protected time away from public life, it wasn't a sudden decision. It was the final piece of a strategy already unfolding. The phrase was chosen carefully. Protected signaled care. Time away implied temporary space. Public life avoided suggesting any deeper crisis. It was the perfect balance of acknowledgement and limitation. Enough to address mounting questions, not enough to invite deeper inquiry. But behind that composed language lay something far more significant. For perhaps the first time in this generation of the royal family, the institution had bent to parental insistence. That matters. Because historically, royal children are introduced gradually to public expectation, balcony appearances, national commemorations, ceremonial unveilings. Familiarity is built deliberately. The public learns their faces, their gestures, their personalities. It reinforces continuity. To interrupt that process is not minor. It alters perception. It signals adaptation inside an institution that rarely admits it must adapt. Inside palace walls, reactions were mixed. Some advisors reportedly viewed the decision as modernization, a recognition that today's scrutiny, amplified by social media and relentless analysis, places unprecedented pressure on children. Others worried about precedent. If one royal child steps back due to emotional strain, what does that mean for expectations placed on future heirs? The monarchy has always prized endurance, strength under pressure, public composure regardless of private strain. Adjusting that expectation, even quietly, is not simple. Catherine, according to those familiar with the mood inside the household, did not celebrate the outcome. There were no triumphant gestures, no sense of victory. Relief, yes, but cautious. The weeks leading to this decision had not been easy. They had been tense, layered with institutional resistance and parental fear. For William, the episode carried weight beyond immediate family. As the future king, he will inherit responsibility for shaping how the institution evolves. By drawing a line around his son's well-being, he signaled something subtle but powerful. Duty does not eclipse humanity, and that signal will echo. Publicly, life continued with precision. William, Catherine, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte fulfilled engagements with polished steadiness. The family unit looked intact. Smiles were measured, movements controlled. The narrative steady. But the absence beside them was no longer a mystery. It was a statement. An empty space can speak louder than 1,000 carefully chosen words. For generations, the monarchy has endured wars, abdications, scandals, and shifting public sentiment because it adapts. Slowly, carefully, sometimes reluctantly. What unfolded behind palace doors in recent weeks may not appear dramatic on the surface. There were no televised confrontations, no sweeping reforms announced from grand halls. Instead, there was a child stepping out of view. And sometimes, that is the louder revolution. Because when a future king confronts established practice and a future queen insists on redefining limits, even subtle changes ripple outward. The balance between image and humanity tilts. The machinery recalibrates. The larger question now lingers quietly in the background. What does this mean long-term? Prince Louis may be absent from the balcony for now. The cheerful waves, the spontaneous expressions, the unpredictable charm paused. But the story of his absence continues to influence conversations inside the monarchy. Because when the heir to the throne insists that legacy cannot come at any cost, that sentiment will shape future choices. When Catherine presses until her voice is heard, that example will not be forgotten. The empty space beside the throne is no longer just an absence. It is evidence of a quiet reckoning, one that forced the monarchy to look inward and ask what it protects first, image or children. And as the royal calendar moves forward with polished certainty, the real shift may not be visible in photographs at all. It may unfold in private meetings, in recalibrated expectations, in how the next generation is introduced or shielded from the glare. The palace closed its gates quietly, but this time, the silence told a story. Silence told a story. Silence told a story.